What's going on, YouTubers, Mopar people? This is Mopar Man 1978. Another subject I wanted to cover for all of us that are on a super low budget, don't have a lot of money. This video is going to be about aftermarket transmission coolers. And stuff that you can use from around your shop or house, or maybe you find that you can ask from a business that might be discarding certain items. But let's just jump into this. Basically, some of the stuff I go to like to salvage yards to save money. I try not to buy anything new unless I absolutely have to. And then if I buy something new, I try to shop around. I go through hours upon hours of internet searches trying to find the cheapest, best quality parts I can find. You know, it's not necessarily because I'm a cheapskate. It's just because I don't have a lot of money and every penny to me counts. You know, and if there's a part that I just can't get around and it's going to cost me some money, I'll save up eventually and get the part. I don't have a money tree here, but anyway, here's some examples I've bought at the salvage yards. I went out, you know, sweat my ass off, pulled parts, motors, transmissions, rear ends, so anything. But got a lot of these from the salvage yard. Paid like, I don't know, maybe $5, $10 at most, if that. When these things would normally run, you know, $20, $30, $40 brand new in the box. Depending on the brand and the size of the unit. This one here, pretty basic. I think it's by Hayden or something like that. Here's a aftermarket one by Hayden that's a little bit more fancy. It's got the tubes that run down and it goes across. These go up and down. You got the small one, like you can tell. The bigger one you get, the better it's going to cool. Some of the people watching this video already know this. It's nothing new. You know, they could probably care less. You know, but they, you know, maybe they like watching the video anyway. This is for the newbies. Salvage yard. Just make sure when you take them home, make sure they're not already crushed up. Like this one here, it's got the cooling fins tore up. I usually take an old cheap X-Acto blade or a pocket knife, and I'll sit there, or a screwdriver, straight-edge screwdriver, and I'll take the time to re-flare or re-straighten out all these cooling fins. Anyway, of course, too, you know, you always want to make sure you use the transmission cooler built into the radiator that came on your vehicle. But what you can do is, maybe you need it to be, your transmission to run a lot cooler. So what you need to do is make sure you run the transmission cooler on the radiator plus one of these. And what you do is you basically can have somebody help you disconnect the transmission line. Have them just barely bump the key or just barely start up for a couple seconds, and watch the end of the tubes, and you find out which one squirts out. That way you'll be able to tell which is the line that comes from the transmission to cool the fluid. You'll run that line into the radiator, and then the other exiting port that comes off the radiator, you'll want to run a hose into one of these. And then the exiting hose from this goes to your return line back to your transmission. That's the most efficient way to cool your transmission. Now you can run a much bigger transmission cooler without the aid of the radiator, which I believe the bigger the cooler, aftermarket cooler you use, and without running it through the little tank for the transmission fluid on the radiator, will actually help keep heat away from the radiator as well, and help your engine run a little bit cooler. Now, when you run a aftermarket torque converter, the higher the stall, the hotter your transmission, especially if you're racing and stuff too, or you're towing, whatever it may be, the temperature is going to get hotter. So maybe you're not going to want to use a small one. You're going to want to start using one of these, or you're going to want to run dual external coolers. Anyway, I've seen where, I mean, like, okay, so for example, you want to save some money, right? Maybe you're running a project build that's from the house that you're going to be putting out a bunch of horsepower, or you're going to be towing, or maybe you have one of those home-built rock crawlers, 4x4 rock crawlers or something. Whether it be at the drag strip or whatever, you can actually use a factory air conditioner condenser that came from, or evaporator coil, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing, that came from the factory for your AC unit. All you want to do is you want to make sure you flush out the system really good, and then blow air through it to make sure anything that might be left over in the coolant, the condenser itself, is cleaned and dried. And then what you would have to do is, like, see, here's the exiting ports over here. I'll get a better shot of this. You could cut these off, and if you're good with welding, aluminum, or soldering, you could actually modify this to where these would come down to, and you could put 3/8 lines on this coming off. But this is a big one. This one came out, this is actually out of the hearse that had a 307, but this hearse is a pretty big car and had a big transmission in it, and it had air conditioning, and it had to pull a, basically when this was in service, especially, this would be hauling a coffin with, an 80-pound person in it, or 300 and some pound person, or whatever, and then plus the weight of the casket. Anyway, you can use these big condenser coils in place. You can just leave them intact and then just run the aftermarket high pressure fuel injected fuel hose from O'Reilly's or AutoZone, whatever, as long as it's high pressure rubber hose. And when I put a hose on, I always put 2 clamps, even if it's flared out or bubbled out on the end, for the clamp to clamp around to for an anchor, so it don't slide off under pressure. Anyway, also the other thing too is I quit buying hose clamps from the automotive stores because they're just cheap and flimsy, and when you try to tighten them up, the worm screw inside strips out the little grooves, crushes the grooves that helps tighten the clamp around the hose. So I've been buying the ones made in America from like Menards back in the plumbing section. They were heavy duty, and they come in sizes I need from my 3/8 lines. And heater hoses too. The heater hoses are made in America that they sell there too. Or you probably go on Grainger or anywhere else like that and find the clamps. But I stay away from the ones from the automotive stores because they've just gotten so cheap and they're flimsy and worthless. Anyway, you put this. And I've also seen where people have taken the evaporator coils or AC, the condensers that are like, this one's only like maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inch thick. I've seen them where they have them up to where it's a big block. It's probably about 3 to 4 inches thick. It's a big evaporator coil, and it's about, this thing here is about, I don't know, almost 3 feet wide, or I mean 3 feet long by 18 inches wide. The ones I've seen that come out of like the AC units in the closet at like an apartment, they have kind of that A-frame shaped coils that sit at an angle, like a triangle. They're real thick, and they got like 3 or 4 rows of these here, but they're only half the size of this this one here. And I've actually seen somebody take that on their straight axle gasser with a big block, and they've actually mounted it to the front of their radiator for for something that they didn't have to spend any money on, or they just had to modify a little bit. So basically, if you have any questions concerning this video or anything else, any other videos I have, let me know. Feel free to comment, share, subscribe. Have a good day.